Within the first 10 minutes of just joining this game, I was like, wow. As a young, impressionable boy at the time, just captured my imagination and I was straight away addicted instantly. Absolutely addicted straight away.
I didn't really know who I was. I was going through a breakup, and WoW, I think, really became that new character of my life, that new world where I could explore almost a second life in that sense.
A combination of the fantasy, the progression where it's never ending. You can never really complete the game because there's just so much to do. As soon as I got home, I would turn my computer on. When I was at school, I would be thinking about WoW. At lunchtime, I would have a WoW book in my bag because I wanted to learn about things. I wanted to see how I could get my character to be better. That's all I thought about.
Most people who are struggling with gaming, especially if they're gaming too much or they have an addiction, they're not translating those skills into. They're just continuing to level up and achieve, and they're ambitious within gaming and they're competent. They're very, very good at what they do. But then if you look around at their life, it's degenerate, it's destructive, it's just getting worse and worse and worse.
Try to focus on leveling up in real life rather than in a gaming life, because once that stops, World of Warcraft now is nowhere near as popular as it was then, but my life is still my life. If you're leveling up and that ends, you've spent all that time when you could have spent all that time working on yourself in real life and actually get yourself to a position to find yourself in a place like this, living every day.
Dario, welcome to Game Quitters.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure, and I'm very excited to get this done. My very first podcast, and a little bit nervous, but I'm excited to get started.
Me too. And we met here in Koh Samui, Thailand, I believe at Amba originally, and I remember you talking about playing World of Warcraft and just what that experience was like for you. So when did you start gaming?
I originally started gaming from very young, actually. I feel like I've been brought up in the gaming world. My mother and my father got me a PlayStation 1 when I was very, very, very young. I think around 5, 6 years old I was at the time. I remember playing Spider-Man games, Spyro the Dragon, Crash Bandicoot, lots of different games when I was younger. And I knew straight away I was kind of hooked. I used to play from 6 o'clock in the morning. I'd go down, my mum had a conservatory in the house, and I'd be on the PlayStation as soon as I woke up. I always had a Game Boy Color, so I was playing Pokemon games from a very young age. So I've kind of always been in the gaming world as such, even from a very young age, and that kind of progressed through my whole childhood.
And how old are you now?
I'm 28 years old now.
Okay, so you're 28, so I'm 34. Yeah. And I remember dial-up internet, mom, get off the internet, I'm trying to play a video game, like that sort of thing. And for you would have seen sort of that transition to high-speed internet as well, and online multiplayer gaming and how that all changed.
Massive difference. I remember Halo on Xbox One, sorry, not Xbox One, but one of the first Xboxes, and not being able to play online on that. And then the transition from that to Halo 3 online was crazy. Absolutely massive difference in online gaming, and I think that's really taken it into a different stratosphere, really. So yeah, I completely remember that whole period, that transition.
And what do you think was the difference for you when it went from kind of offline, more single player type gaming to online multiplayer?
It definitely became a lot more sociable. So when in the times of probably, I think when the internet kind of online gaming came mainstream as such, I was going into secondary school. So that was around the time I was about probably year 11. Not year 11, I was around 11 years old, 11 to 12 years old. And I remember my mum actually, she never used to let me go online games. I would have an Xbox and I had Halo, I had all the games, but she would never let me have them because she thought I was going to speak into paedophiles online, and that's a true story. All my other friends had an online Xbox Live, and they were playing Rainbow Six, GTA, all these kind of games, and I was like, I really need to play online, but I couldn't. It definitely became a more sociable thing, so it became more enticing, because what would happen is you'd go to school, you'd have your friends speaking about games, you'd have your friends speaking at lunchtime, and they'd all be discussing. I was kind of felt left out at that point until I did actually finally get Xbox Live. And once I was in that kind of community, then everyone plays because everyone else is playing. So that was the main thing to do after school, because in the UK, in the winter times, it was cold, it was wet and drizzly. You don't want to be going out and playing out. So we spent most of our evenings after school playing online, and that's kind of really where my not really addiction at the time, but the kind of entry into online gaming started.
There's so much peer pressure to play games, and I think nowadays that's like one of the biggest differences is, like some of my best memories growing up were like biking with a neighbor, just going exploring, going on adventures and being outside. come home after dark, or playing street hockey. Any Canadian knows the phrase car, because everyone would have to stop and move off the street. And nowadays, so many kids, the way they connect is through online gaming. It's the only topic they know what to talk about, and it's really fundamentally the only activity that they have. And I think that peer pressure is really a huge part of what leads people to play.
100%. That was definitely a case for me. A lot of my friends, my whole friendship group, were playing online. I wanted to play, so eventually I got online, and then became one of that group.
I remember speaking in Australian, and I had a parent, in a Q&A say, my son doesn't even really want to play, but they feel like they have to, because if they don't play, they'll be the outcast at school. Did you ever feel a pressure to play?
Absolutely, yeah. My friends, they all played it. Most of all with this, I think really the heightened point of that was for Call of Duty 4 when that first kind of came out. Almost exclusively every single one of my friends played that. And it was like, if you didn't play that at night, there was nothing to speak about in the playground the next day. Because what would happen is we'd have clan battles on after school, and then the next day you'd be speaking about, do you remember what happened in that round? Do you remember what happened in that? And it was like, if you didn't play, you got left out. So yes, absolutely. I mean, obviously there was other friendship groups, other kind of groups in our school, because we had quite a large school that didn't play online games. But that wasn't really my crowd. My crowd was a group of friends that did play online games, and I felt really welcomed into that, and I felt, how would you say, just a part of that community that made me feel, as part of that community, basically. So
it was like your clan, it was your tribe, it was your group of friends, it was where you kind of felt accepted.
Absolutely, and that was more towards Call of Duty. However, that was different with World of Warcraft. My first kind of online game addiction was to World of Warcraft, and that was before Call of Duty. But World of Warcraft was seen as quite a nerdy game back then. It probably is still now, to be honest. So I haven't played for a long time, so I don't really know. But it wasn't viewed as like a cool game to play, whereas Call of Duty was. So there was definitely an element where I didn't connect with other people about World of Warcraft when I was playing at the time. There was a couple of friends in my school that did play it, and then that became obviously someone to speak to about at lunchtimes and things like that. So yeah, there was also that part of it.
So how old were you when you started to play WoW?
I started playing WoW when I was around 12 or 13 years old, something around that age. I ended up going to Italy on holiday one summer, and I was there for quite a long time. So I used to go to Italy for pretty much the whole summer when I was younger. And I got bored, and my friend's dad, who worked for my dad, he said, why don't you give this game a go? Because his son was playing this game and needed a friend to play with. And the thing with these games is it's not fun if you're not playing with someone else. And I think that's where that kind of community comes from. These massive multiplayer online role-playing games, they entice you to play with other people, and that's the kind of nature of the game. So he needed a friend to play with, so he gave me this copy of this game. I went back to download it. I remember it took me 5 days to download this game. 5 full days. I mean, I got back to England, I put it on my laptop, I had a Sony Vaio computer, and I put it in it. It took me 5 full days to download this game. And when I can still remember this moment very vividly now. I started, I don't know if anyone watching this did play WoW, I started as a Night Elf Rogue, and I was in Teldrassil, and this is proper nerdy talk coming out right now, but I remember the moment it literally captured me straight away. Within the first 10 minutes of just joining this game, I was like, wow. As a young, impressionable boy at the time, just captured my imagination, and I was straight away addicted instantly. Absolutely addicted straight away, because I just loved the whole atmosphere of the game, the fantasy behind it, the lore, just the progression. I loved seeing other characters that had obviously been playing it for a long time, and I was like, wow, I need to get to that level. And it kind of forces you to play more, because then you kind of see what other people are rounded around on amazing mounts, which is real life cars, for example. So, it kind of entices you to become addicted to the game.
And what was it about WoW that enticed you so much? It was the fantasy, it was the lore, it was being able to level up. Like you mentioned, within the first 10 minutes, you felt totally addicted. Like, what was it in those first 10 minutes that really stood out to you? I'm quite a fan of fantasy. So it was very much a large world, a lot to explore, something I've never experienced before. So a combination of the fantasy, the progression where it's never ending, you can never really complete the game because there's just so much to do. And it just, I don't know how to explain it, it had a magic aura to it. It had something new
knew about it, where you could speak to people, you could chat, you could go into different dungeons and raids together, and it kind of built you built friendships with people, and you're like, oh, are you playing tonight? You can win online, and it kind of like captured and made you go back there every day to play it, because you didn't want to miss out on what other people were doing. You wanted to progress your character, so there was that element to the part where you didn't want to be falling behind in the progression. That was definitely later on in the later levels, when I was actually playing a bit more towards the end game. But within the first 10 minutes, the main thing was just the atmosphere, the aura of the game, just how big it was, really, because that was a difference, because playing that game compared to like Halo, where you've got a limited level, where you can only do this one thing and one mission, with World of Warcraft, there is endless possibilities. You can explore, you can do professions, you can do raiding, you can do PvP. There's just so much to do in it that it's such a time sink. So that's what got me, really.
And there's something for everyone. I think that's a big thing, not just about WoW, but just gaming in general, is the variety. Like whatever you like, whatever you're motivated by, whatever your preference for a game is, there's certainly a game out there for you. For me with WoW, certainly I think I relate to that kind of first 10 minutes of being hooked, because the first time my character leveled up, which in WoW it takes only a couple minutes, and the animation over my character, the ding, that instantly made me go like, wow, I want to get that more.
So you used to play WoW as well then?
Yeah, so I started out I was a Night Elf hunter. And at the time I was a competitive CS player. And actually I remember when I started playing WoW, there was kind of tension within my team, because I was spending more time playing WoW and not as much time kind of practicing CS. And when you're talking about things like Halo, where you're just one level and it's just a game kind of repetitively over and over again, CS is like that too. Whereas WoW, I felt like it was the first experience I had with more of a role-playing game, more of an open world type game. And I remember I was frustrated because it was messing up my aim in CS, because the mouse sensitivity was so different, but just I kept going back to it. And at the time of my life, I was playing WoW, my life was going through a pretty rough spot. I didn't really know who I was. I was going through a breakup, and WoW, I think, really became that new character of my life, that new world where I could explore almost a second life in that sense, and being able to level up and get new skills and all the other activities that come with WoW was really where I spent all my time.
What age were you when you started playing WoW?
I would have been around like 17 or 18, probably right around 18 years old.
Okay, yeah, so a little bit older than me, yeah.
But when you started, 12, 13, those are formidable years, and you finding your sense of identity, finding yourself as just your independent voice. And did you find that in WoW?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I through my childhood, I think through secondary school, I had a lot of friends, but I also had a lot of enemies as such. I didn't have a fantastic time in my secondary school, and I expressed myself differently. I went home and I played on online games because I could be someone else, and that is definitely a case. I look back on those times, and I think a mixture between me moving schools into a different school just before I went to secondary school. I didn't have a massive amount of friends in that point, and I made really good connections with certain people, and they were also people who played online games. So that created a bond, and that was like a thing that we spoke about every day. I vividly remember sometimes in the summer holidays where I would pack my laptop in my bag and I would walk to my friend's house. Sometimes it was an hour walk, but I didn't have I had a bike, sorry. I didn't have a car or anything, but because we wanted to spend time, I would go over to his house for the weekend, and we would play just in the same room together. We would do quests together, and we would raid, and we would level up together, and that just gave a sense of friendship. And I don't regret it at all. I had a great friendship with my friend who played at the time, and I made friends in the game as well. People who I still speak to today, even though I've never met them. They're great people, and they've got their own families and things now. Everyone's grown up. So, I think it's hard to understand the level of impact that game could have on someone's life unless you played it at that time. Right now, it's not going to be the same, but through those days, there was not much alternatives like that. The World of Warcraft was one of the most popular game, if not the most popular game at that time. So unless you ever played it, it's hard to understand the profound impact it had on people's lives.
And at the time, so when I was playing WoW, my life was going through, a really difficult time. For you, it sounds like your life at the time was, just kind of normal 12, 13, 14-year-old boy. and WoW is just kind of a part of your life. How at the time were you able to balance your gaming with WoW and your life?
I don't think balance was the case for me. There was no balancing. I became so addicted to it that I would spend, as soon as I got home, I would turn my computer on. When I was at school, I would be thinking about WoW. At lunchtime, I would have a WoW book in my bag because I wanted to learn about things. I wanted to see how I could get my character to be better. So there was no balancing. That's all I thought about, and the same was for my friend and other friends that were playing at the same time. So I think that wasn't just independently me. I think it was everyone who was playing the game at that time. There was moments where I had very strong arguments with my mum about it. I just didn't balance. I was completely addicted. I would play from the moment I finished, from the moment I got home from school, I would play until physically I couldn't play anymore. My mum wouldn't let me play. Sometimes she would limit me to certain hours of the night. And I tried to find ways around that. And that's where I really kind of started to realize that. At the time, I didn't realize it was an addiction, but I just knew I loved playing this game this much. And that's physically all I thought about.
And how long did this go on for?
This went on to, I think, around the age of 18 years old. I had on and off periods where I would stop playing for a month or so, but eventually there would be something new that came out and it would bring me back in, like a new expansion or some kind of new character or new race, and I'm like, right, let's give it a go again. And yeah, that brought me back in. And I probably stopped kind of being, not addicted, but I didn't play as much when I was around 18 years old. When I got my car, I got a job, and I ended up doing a bit of traveling, to be honest. So yeah, that was definitely around the kind of time that I did. But for those period of around 12, 13 to 18, just solid playing on WoW, and obviously all the time Call of Duty as well. I played a lot of Call of Duty. Me and my friends would spend the whole weekend playing. They would come over, I would go to theirs, and we would play from Friday night till Sunday night, non-stop. And that's all we did. But there was nothing else to do. And I think that's also a case of the society that we lived in. As much as you wanted. In the summer we did play out, but we were still associated with gaming, and we would go play football and things like that. But in the winter in the UK, at that age, there is nothing you can do apart from going to do some sporting activities, which I did. But apart from that, there's nothing else.
I only played World of Warcraft one time. I had one character, I leveled that character up, and it was my only character, that was it. For you, you went back a few times, made new characters, went to different expansions, and essentially started from scratch again. What was that experience like going back to play again from the beginning?
I viewed it as a way of filling time. I would get to a point where on my main character I got a bit bored, or I'd maxed out everything that I could for that week, because the way that World of Warcraft works is that you have like weekly quests or weekly achievements or weekly things that you have to do. I would smash them out straight away, and then I would have nothing else to do, or I'd get bored of doing the same things. I also viewed leveling other characters as a way of making money, and that was like an extra person to your roster, like an extra staff member as such. And I used to level up characters with different professions and different abilities that would allow me to maximize the potential when it came to making money, which was one of my main things that I was doing on World of Warcraft at the time.
And there were skills that you learned in WoW that eventually led you into entrepreneurship and kind of what you do now. So take us back to, like, what did you learn in WoW that actually benefited your career?
I think people really underestimate this, and this is genuinely true, that I learned a lot of things about business from playing WoW. There's a thing called the auction house. For people who don't know what WoW is, the auction house is basically it's like Amazon. It's like a selling market, isn't it? So you have your goods and you place them on the auction house, and then people will buy them for place bids, or they'll buy them at a certain price. So I was obsessed with collecting mounts, collecting rare items, and for that you needed gold. And gold was everything, because if you didn't have gold, you couldn't go to the top end raids, because you needed to have the best gear, the best enchantments, the best gems. So basically you needed the best upgrades for everything. And it was all about showing off a little bit at the time. With the best mounts, you'd sit in certain cities and you'd sit on your mount and leave your character there for an hour, and people would look at you. That was the silly things when you were a kid that made a lot of difference. So I started to play the auction house, and I started to learn about how that worked for YouTube. So I would spend hours a day sometimes researching methods on YouTube of how people were making money. And these were like, this is over 10 years ago now. So YouTube wasn't the kind of YouTube that we get today where it's very detailed. It was, there was a few videos, but people didn't want to sell the secrets as much. I've never even, that's a good point. I would love to see what kind of videos there are on WoW right now. I might do that one day. But I went on and started to learn these tricks in the auction house. I installed add-ons through the computer. You basically had add-ons that would scan the auction house. And I learned lots and lots of tactics, such as buying and selling demands, I used to buy out the competition. So a simple way of what happened was there would be the weekly raids would reset on a Wednesday night. So the top level raiders would need enchantments, potions, gems for all their gear, for example, for that Wednesday. And what I would do coming up to Wednesday, so around Monday or Tuesday, probably even sometimes Sunday, I would go to the auction house and I would start to buy every single item of a certain category that was placed on the auction house. So what would happen, people would mine them and there would be a limited supply of them. And then I would stockpile these and I would list them all at a certain time when I knew people were finishing their raids or starting the raids, depending on the item. So what that taught me is like, because I was the only person who had the supply, I could name my price. And that's the same thing that I do now in my business nowadays. A key success to my camper van business nowadays is that I've always had supply. I stock a lot of product in my business, so I can say yes to people much quicker than other companies can. And you could say I could translate that from WoW, but really that is a basic principle. But that did have an impact on my understanding of business at a young age of 13, 14 years old. And that's the same thing that I do now. So I just have a large stockpile of roofs instead of gems, and I have the ability to say yes to my customers. And that's one of the reasons that I was successful in WoW. Another great idea was I used to set different characters with different professions, so that would be relative to today's skills. How can I have staff members that have got different skills that can provide a service that translates into a profit? And that's what my characters were at the time. I had different characters that were leveled up in different professions that would allow me to say, well, I can make an enchantment out of that, and this character has maximum gem crafting. And that's the same thing in your team, and when it comes to starting a business. If you've got a certain person, which you should always be hiring a better person than yourself in certain areas. I have a staff member now who's better than me at fitting the roofs, who's better than me at doing the carpet lining, better than me at doing the electrics, and that's how it should be, and that's in your team. It's the same way. So you're collecting characters, you're collecting steam, you're building a roster, and that allows you to offer more services and create more margin.
And I know so many people are always talking about how gaming can teach you real life skills that can make you successful in life. And I think this is such a great example of that real application.
Yeah.
Most people who are struggling with gaming, especially if they're gaming too much or they have an addiction, they're not translating those skills into. They're just continuing to level up and achieve, and they're ambitious within gaming, and they're competent. They're very, very good at what they do. But then if you look around at their life, it's degenerate, it's destructive, it's just getting worse and worse and worse. So there was a moment where you decided, enough with gaming, and you were, enough with WoW, enough with gaming, and you were moving on. So take us back to what was that transition like for you, and how do you break out of this addiction to WoW and actually start to move forward in your life?
For me personally, the transition, what I feel, was quite natural. And the reason is that I had come to the age of 18, I got my first car, so I was more interested in going out, meeting with friends, meeting with girls, socializing, going out drinking in town. And then I actually moved to Italy as well. And when I was in a new country, they didn't have great internet, so I didn't really get interested in it. I did try to carry on playing, but I just eventually lost interest. I didn't find it, and I wanted to work on my life rather than a character's life. I realized, and I think that's, if anyone is listening that is in the same position, the way I look at it now in my life, I don't get addicted to games anymore because I'm more addicted to leveling up in my own life. And that's a very fulfilling reason. I view my life as a video game now. You could say that to almost any situation. This world is endless. You can't complete life. You can't complete this video game that we call life. And we can effectively level up. You can do better in certain skills. Right now I'm training Muay Thai. That's a skill that I never had. So it's the same principle. So if anyone wants to do that, try and learn a new skill. Try and get into a different area that you might never thought you'd be interested in. Give it a go, and you might find that there is actually a passion there that you've never discovered. And try to focus on leveling up in real life rather than in a gaming life, because once that stops, World of Warcraft now is nowhere near as popular as it was then. But my life is still my life. If you're leveling up and that ends, you've spent all that time when you could have spent all that time working on yourself in real life and actually get yourself to a position to find yourself in a place like this, living every day.
There are a lot of people who think they will eventually grow out of gaming, but now I think there's a lot of people listening to this that, if you look back on the last couple of years of your life, you didn't grow up, you didn't grow out of it, and you didn't have that natural transition, and now you're 25, 26, 30, 35, 40 maybe, and you're still gaming, you're still in the same rut, you're still continuing to play and justifying it, even though your life is nowhere near where you want it to be. And so I just want to really encourage anybody watching and listening that, like, if you were one of those people saying, eventually I'll grow out of it, but you haven't, maybe it's time to start taking more action to make sure that you grow out of it, because, it'll continue to affect your life until you decide to make a change.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's always the possibility, if I was trying to advise one to, you could take up your service. Obviously, you run Game Quitters. That's obviously a great service that people can take up if they feel that they don't have the ability to do that themselves. I know I didn't have that ability to do that myself when I was that age, when I was younger. No one could take me away from my computer at the time, even to the point where my mum would cut the Ethernet cables, or she would take the power cables to my router. I would find a way around it. So if you feel like you're at that point and you want to level up in your life, great reason to contact yourself, Game Quitters, but also a change in your environment. A change in your environment has proven to me, in this experience that I've had here through meeting you and meeting other people in the new elite, etc., it's shown me how much that can make a profound difference on someone's life. My life has completely changed from I'm not saying I was in any certain way, but in the last 6 months and this experience of being in Thailand, which has been completely different, my whole mentality, my whole mindset has changed a huge amount. So if you're struggling, you want to, maybe go traveling for a bit, see the world, get out there and see what there is out there. And I think eventually you'll find that gaming isn't as fun as you think it is.
Gaming is fun when it's the only thing that it's the only thing that you're doing. But there's so much more to experience in life. And for me, travel has always been the best personal development. It's forced me to really look at what I can control, what I can't. It's forced me to have to be resourceful and find, that determination within myself. It's forced me to have to learn to manage my emotions and my anxieties and be in uncomfortable situations, because travel, you're kind of constantly in these uncomfortable situations. And it's also it's taught me a lot about how to stick up for myself, There's a bit of a running joke now here in Thailand where, there's a bunch of guys similar to us and some people who are new to traveling, and, they tell us prices that they're paying for things, and, quickly realize that they're overpaying or not paying it, they're paying more than they need to. But it also teaches you how to negotiate. It teaches you how to understand the different resources and all of it. So I think travel is absolutely one of the best things that people can do.
Traveling for me was one of the main things that caused me to stop gaming, because I just didn't have the opportunity or didn't have the time. I met new friends and they weren't interested in gaming, and I got interested in things that they were doing. And that shows it as well with the new elite that we're in. The people that you surround yourself with greatly impact your choices on a daily basis. So if they're not gaming, you're not going to be gaming. If they're going to the gym, you're going to be going to the gym, because you feel like you need to keep up, and that's the kind of people that I want to hang around with, and that's the kind of people that I've found out here, such as yourself.
Yeah, likewise. And I know being here, I was kind of by myself for a long time, trying to find other people, like-minded people who were trying to, improve their life and improve their business and just really see how they can reach their potential. And, meeting all, for people listening, we're part of a mastermind called the New Elite, which is run by a YouTuber named Jack. And I'll put a link in the description if you want to check it out. It's not cheap, so I just want to be upfront about that it is for people who are probably a bit further along in their journey, maybe 25 plus, and, looking to really be surrounded by other people who are serious and ambitious and are successful. But if that's you, then that can be a fantastic resource and network to be around other people.
Yeah, and it's how I met you. It's a fantastic example. You know, I would never be in such a beautiful place doing my first podcast, speaking about my experience in WoW, if I hadn't had this opportunity to meet you through the New Elite. And that's a great example of a community, how it can drive you to the next level. I honestly cannot believe that I'm actually talking about World of Warcraft and my gaming, because it's not something I've spoken about for a long, long time. And if anything, I've never really spoken about it like this. It brings me back to my childhood, my memories and the things that I went through. And it's kind of shows, you know, I'm quite proud of what I've actually achieved by coming away from that life. So for people that are struggling with that, just think about what could you achieve if you, instead of dedicated 5 years to playing a game, 5 years of dedicating it to yourself, where you could end up in a place like this. That's what I would say.
So if you were to think back to that 13, 14, 15-year-old boy in the UK in the winter, it's gray, it's dreary, it's raining, what advice would you share for that young boy now to avoid falling into that same path?
That's a hard question, because even now it's even more accentuated, I think, the problem, because the younger kids of the younger generation have been brought up with even stronger, more powerful gaming systems, and everyone else is playing them, so it's hard. I would say socialize with people that aren't too interested in it. You know, get out there, do physical activities, try to focus on how you become a better person without associating with gaming, and try to limit yourself as much as you can. That's definitely a case, but I would say also have fun with it. Don't necessarily, if I was at that age, I would still want to have fun. So I would say spend the time when you can outside, trying to revive this. I mean, we used to call it in the UK playing out. I don't know in Canada, but we would go knock on each other's like, is so-and-so playing out? So I don't see that anymore. I don't see kids playing on the streets anymore, and that is sad to see, because I did spend a lot of my childhood playing out. In the summer months, for definite, I was out every single day. I'd be out on my scooter, my bike. But given to the advice to youngest kids, just try and socialise with people that aren't too interested in gaming, because that's kind of what not forced me, but kind of encouraged my gaming habit at the time.
And I think, just if I could share a couple tips for people watching and listening, is that if you have to be inside, there are so many other things that you can do indoors that don't have to be gaming. So for instance, even if you're on a computer, there are things like learning video editing or coding or music production. There's so many other things that you can do within that sphere that can also be productive for your life, or healthy and less of a problem, easier to control, that also can lead you to opportunities where you can have a career, you can make money online, or you can meet other people and actually form communities around that as well. So I think gaming's often the default, primarily because we get into it so young. But there are so many other skills and things that you can learn, things you can spend your time on.
100%. Right now, I was speaking to a guy, actually in relation to Harbonator's video course. I think he was 14 or 15 years old, from the Netherlands. And he was asking me what he could do. And I said, he was thinking about video editing. There is no reason now in today's economy that people their age of 14, 15 can't learn video editing, can't learn coding, can't go and do online courses and start a business from it at that age. There's no reason, because that wasn't a possibility back then. Now it is. Everyone's got access to computers nowadays, good speed internet. You can reach out, learn those skills. If I had the opportunity at that age, I probably would have done the same thing. I would definitely got into some kind of skill such as video editing, because it's very simple to do at that younger age. You can't realistically go into doing, forex trading, or, starting a real workshop business like I got at the age of 14 or 15. But you can realistically start a video editing business at the age of 14 or 15, because I know for a fact that there's people out there looking for good video editors constantly, people that are reliable. And if you can start that as a side hustle at 14, 15 years old, by the time you're 18, 19, you're going to have 4 or 5 years under your belt, and that's going to be a massive difference. You're going to have a massive head start compared to everyone else.
And I totally agree, because they're the first generation of kids with this opportunity. Like when we were growing up, even the opportunity to make money online, social media platforms and stuff, like these did not really exist. But nowadays, it really is the first generation that has this opportunity where it can be a completely different path, or it can just be a skill that you have. You make some side cash. Maybe that gives you an opportunity to travel. Maybe it gives you an opportunity to meet other people, make some friends, or just avoid falling into a trap of gaming.
100%. A very good comparison is at the age of 13, 14, I was doing a paper rounds and I earned £8 a week. That's $10 a week. And I used to go Monday through to Saturday. Now, there's no reason a kid can't go, I know because I paid a video editor not too long ago, who can make $60, $70 in a week for editing 1 or 2 videos, which can take 1 or 2 hours. So there's a massive amount of money to be made at that age, and that if I'd have that opportunity to make that kind of money, the first thing I would be doing is going to learn a skill like that right now. And
so what's next for you? Like, you've had a camper van business, you've been pursuing your own businesses for a while. I know you've been in Thailand the last 6 months, and that's been really good for you. So what's next for you?
What's next for me? That's a good question. I have a lot of ideas in my mind. I have a good, strong idea of what I want to pursue. I have exciting opportunities coming my way. I'm looking forward to the future. Right now, I would say that I've been in a bit of a self-reflection phase. I've spent the last 6 months here. I've made some amazing friends. I've learned a lot of things that I didn't have any idea about before. Completely smashed my personal beliefs that I had before. So the next stage is to move into a new career. I'm going to base myself ideally in Bangkok at some point and then go from there. But for now, there's a few things I've got in my mind, but I want to keep them there until I bring them to fruition. But I'm excited for the future. I'm excited to move in. I feel like I'm moving into the next stage of my career and next stage of my life, trying to build a personal brand for sure, giving back on what I've learned. I've built a business from absolute zero up to 7-figure in revenue, yearly revenue. I've got staff members. I've learned a lot. I've been through every single problem you can probably think of for a small business. And I'm not saying I've been in a huge business. I haven't grown a huge business, but I'm ready for that next level now, and that's where I'm going to be taking myself. So I'm going to be focusing on building a lifestyle and a career around that.
And where can people connect with you?
So at the moment, I'm on Instagram. I've just started my YouTube channel as well. So I'm giving back on the information, doing vlogs, etc., my travels. I want to create a nice, interesting, fun YouTube channel which teaches people about business and also self-improvement, but also creating a fun environment through traveling, learning through learning through my travels. And so yes, through YouTube, and obviously on Instagram is my main kind of following, and TikTok.
And I'll put all the links for that in the description. So definitely give Dario a follow. And I'm hoping we'll have some footage too that we can share of you smashing me in the face a little bit from the boxing that we did. And that was a lot of fun. And just, learning Muay Thai, taking fitness more seriously, the travel, all of that's been, huge for you. And I know it's been huge for me as well. And so really encourage anyone out there watching this to just get out there in the real world. And there's so much good life to be lived. Any final words of advice for people listening to this? Final words of advice, I would say, is just to go for it. Don't think about it too much. Risk, take lots of risks, because I would never be where I am right now if I didn't risk things. Be assertive, make sure you know your worth, and don't let people walk over you. I remember my business, and a little backstory. I remember walking around a trade show when I was 22 years old. I just started my camper van business. Suppliers didn't want to talk to me. And last year I walked around the same trade show and people came up to me and they actually apologized for the way that they treated me in that time. So don't be scared to go away, to tackle big problems even at a young age. Just make sure that you present yourself in a manner that is professional, even though despite your age. And people, if you go for it, people will respect you for that. So go for it, be legendary, be courageous, and make sure that you're leveling up in real life rather than your gaming life. Dario, thanks so much for being here, and thanks for sharing your story with Game Quitters. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.